Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Noah, and in this video I wanted to share the concept of slow thinking. I not only want to share the definition of slow thinking, but I also want to explain my thoughts as to why practicing slow thinking is absolutely vital to live a successful life. With all of that being said, let's get right into the video. So what is slow thinking? Despite what you might think, it's not someone taking a long time to answer a question, right? You know, someone asks you a simple question and then you sit there saying, for 5 minutes, right? That's not exactly the case. Slow thinking, as far as my definition goes, is someone who's almost looking ahead of their first answer. Slow thinking, as far as my definition goes, is someone who is thinking forward when they're presented with either a question or, anything really, anything that involves any kind of critical thinking within our life. Another way that I've seen slow thinking, at least as far as my definition goes, defined is a process called multi-step thinking. This is pretty self-explanatory, but it basically describes the process of thinking one step ahead of your answer, right? So if you're presented with a difficult situation, rather than act whimsically, right, doing the first thing that comes to your head, you think of, the first step that might be best for the second step and the third step and the fourth step and so on. I think the best example of this would be in a game like chess, right, where one move can cause a rippling effect that'll last the entire game and can really cause you to lose the match. Now, I'm not any kind of even a decent chess player by any means, but this is really similar to what I like to call slow thinking or multi-step thinking. Now, why is this important, right? Why am I even talking about this in this video today? And it's come to my attention, just through life and, seeing news and, just going through the motions, that I think many people would benefit from this slow thinking and this multi-step thinking, whatever definition you want to whatever title basically you want to use for it. But I think more people need to think of what's going to happen next, following an answer that they give, following an action that they might give, and so on. And of course, looping this into finance, I think this is really, really important. A good example, with school starting up for incoming freshmen, on the horizon here, is college tuition, right? And this is difficult, it's a difficult conversation, but I think the same principle applies where you're presented with a situation of maybe going to school, right? If that's what you want to do, but we're not thinking in terms of 5 years down the road, generally speaking, right? We're not thinking 10 years down the road. So the tuition, right, that's being charged to you if you are going to school may not seem like that much right now, but we're not thinking ahead, right? So we're not thinking of what $50,000 or $60,000 or in severe cases, $100,000 of student loans can do to you long term. It's just not something that's really taught. It's not something that's really discussed in high school, and I think that's a really big shame, but that's a good example that I can think of right now. And these examples, I could go on and on and on with them. They're just, life is simply rife with them, and they go beyond finance, right? Another financial example potentially could be a vehicle, right? So you need a new vehicle, right? So your options are, a used and a new, and instead of considering, everything that is within used and new, you just decide to go new, right? Because you want a new car, you can afford it at the time, but you don't think of the next step of, what are the bills going to look like to upkeep this car, right? What kind of car is it? That's another point in this too, where the car brand is a pretty important decision, because some cars just do not hold, do not hold up, right? So you're going to be spending more money to just keep the car alive than you would another one. But that's another step that you would have potentially missed if you wouldn't have practiced this multi-step thinking. The most important example, obviously, on my channel here is saving and investing, right? Getting your finances in order. So in the moment, right, do people want to do this, right? Do they want to sit down and create a budget and kind of basically decide on where they're going to cut corners, where they're going to limit themselves? And that is, of course, a a budget, right? And everybody, I think, needs one. But rather than doing that and, kind of swallowing the hard pill in the beginning, they kind of just say, hey, things are working right now. I'm not on the street. I'm just going to I'm going to go through the motions, right? I'll figure it out when I figure it out. But so they basically didn't think past the first answer, right? The first question being, should you get your finances in check? And the answer being, I'll just do it later, right? So of course, the conversation ends there, right? The thought process ends there. Whereas using a slow thinking process and actually looking kind of into the future, someone would notice that another good example, obviously, for this channel is, getting your finances in check, right? Getting on a savings plan, getting on an investing plan. And, the question, of course, is, should I be doing this right now? And rather than just saying, I'll figure it out later, I'm just working on stuff right now, or things are going fine right now, I just don't want to think about it, and ending the conversation there, I think a lot more people should be practicing this slow thinking and saying, is it going to be better if I kind of just go through the motions and prolong it a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? Or is it going to be better if I kind of bite the bullet right now, get a budget in place, and, get my journey going, right? Get my financial journey going. And I think, unfortunately, this is a huge sore spot for a lot of individuals because, creating a budget, actually sitting down and limiting yourself, and that's what a budget is ultimately, is relatively difficult, right? But forward looking, right? Slow thinking, multi-step thinking is going to allow people to kind of get a sense of where they want to be later in life, right? And that's really, really important. And it's going to kind of take your attention away from just kind of living in the moment right now. Rather, the more important option is getting your finances in check and, setting yourself up for financial success down the line. So those were a few of the financial examples that I wanted to provide. But like I said, slow thinking and multi-step thinking goes beyond finance, right? It translates, it implements itself into all of our aspects in life, and it can benefit us if we start practicing it basically with everything. So a good example that I can think of is maybe if you have a dispute with your neighbor. I don't know what it would be about, right? Maybe you mowed their flowers, or maybe you broke a window with a golf ball, right? I'm not speaking from personal experience necessarily, but something like that happens, and maybe you are the neighbor that has your window broken, right? Or you are the neighbor that has your flowers mowed, right? So you instantly, right there, this is the circumstance, right? This is the question of, what do I do? Let's take the flowers, for example, right? So your neighbor mows over your flowers, they're gone, they're not coming back, and you're in front of them, right? So this is the question, right, of what do I do at this point? What are my actions? And I think a lot of people, unfortunately, would do the first thing that comes to their mind, right, which is start yelling, right? Start yelling, saying, calling them dumb or clueless or, something like that. But a better alternative to this, right, is to actually just pause for a moment and actually look at what might happen, what the repercussions might be in a multi-step fashion if you were to pursue the first thing that came to your head, right? So think about what would happen if you started yelling at them, right? In the moment, you might get your fix, but what does that do long term? What does that do in a week or 2 weeks? Maybe, you guys were good friends before, right? Good neighbors before. Is this going to soil it, right? Who knows? But that would be multi-step thinking. And what would eventually happen, I hope, is that you would slow think this process, right? Slow think what you're going to do and come to the conclusion that, yes, the flowers were destroyed, for example. But is it worth my time, my energy, and possibly, a good friendship with my neighbor, just to yell at them, right? So my options are you yell at them and just express how you're feeling in that moment, or you say, hey, I'm upset that this happened, but is there any way that we can get them replanted, right? Would you be willing to, help me replant them? They weren't that expensive. Could you do that, right? And obviously, if they're a decent neighbor, they're going to say, yeah, I'm sorry, I want to help out with that. So I think a lot of people, although this was a really, really simple example, I'm sure a lot of you viewers can kind of relate to a situation where you've kind of been in the unfortunate seat where you've had to deal with someone who has not been slow thinking, right? Who has not practiced multi-step thinking. They're not thinking ahead, right? They're just thinking in the moment. They're doing the first thing that comes to their head, and that's it, right? And oftentimes, and this has happened to me too, where I've been in that unfortunate seat, and because you can practice slow thinking from either side of it. So rather than yelling back, taking things very calmly is what I did. And what ended up happening is that they came back later and actually apologized, because when they had a chance to ruminate on it on their own time, they realized that what they said and what they did, whatever it may have been, was really uncalled for, especially considering that they were yelling at someone who was 40 years younger than them. So this is another real world example that's not so much in the financial realm, but another example of how slow thinking is extremely important in our day-to-day lives. The long story short with this video is that I think a lot more people, the country as a whole, will benefit from people taking their time with their decisions, right? With the way that they make even small decisions. Obviously, for big decisions, I'd hope people would put a little bit more thought into it, but little decisions go a long way too. Like I explained with the flower example, where one outburst can cause an entire neighborhood, or two neighbors to split apart, right, and not be friendly with each other anymore. So I hope that this kind of sets a little bit of a reminder to practice this type of process, to think slow about topics. And like I said, it's not going to take you all day to answer a single question, but try to look into the future a little bit, i.e., if I do this now, what's going to happen tomorrow? And if I do this, what's going to happen the next day, and so on. So it's just I hope it acts as like I said, a little bit of a reminder to take your time with decisions and be considerate of what kind of repercussions your decisions have. And of course, if you've stuck along this far in the video, I want to thank you so much for your time. I greatly do appreciate it. If you did happen to enjoy the video, please feel free to leave a like. If you didn't, please leave a dislike. With all of that being said, thank you so much for tuning in today, and as always, happy financing.